Welcome to another edition of the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. I'm Don Grothoff. Along with my wife Gina, we have a practice called Focused Healthy Family, helping families get past the behavior and anxiety issues naturally. We also produce the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast, where we are advocates for our own family and others dealing with OCD and anxiety. In the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast, we do interviews, provide resources, and information for treatment and support of OCD recovery. We also want to hear from you, your comments, and if you want to tell your story, we want to put it up on the podcast on our Stories from the OCD side.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Q Sciences. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found Q Sciences. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com, or visit invisiblewheelchair.com and find out more information there.
and stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like Q Sciences.
Now, let's get to that podcast. The following is an interview I did with Annette Hines, who is a lawyer who specializes in families with disabilities. Now, let's get to that interview.
Welcome back, podcast fans. I'm your host, Annette Hines, and this is Parenting Impossible, the Special Needs Survival Podcast. Our podcast today is talking about the invisible wheelchair, and that's a different journey. That's a different conversation. So my interview today is with Don Grothoff, and I know I'm always mangling people's names, and I feel so bad about that. But Don and Gina are proud parents of 3 children, 22, 18, and 11. And Don's an author and a speaker and an EFT practitioner, family coach, and Gina's practicing OT. That's an occupational therapist for those of you who are not in the biz. And she runs a North Carolina homeschool website. So they together have this incredible business, and their Focused Healthy Family business works on behavior transformation on the whole family. I love it. And I really love also Gina's life journey and experiences where she's talking about child-led learning and conscious parenting. So it was a really awesome, fascinating conversation with Don. Gina tends to be kind of behind the scenes, so I didn't get to talk with her, but I'm hoping that someday I get to do an interview with Gina as well. Don was very forthcoming. It got real emotional, which we tend to do sometimes when we're talking about our kids and our life experiences. It can be really dramatic and traumatic as we're bringing through the difficult journey. And, you know, it's courageous to share the mistakes that you've made along the way as parents, but it is so generous to share that advice and to share those mistakes and those learning experiences with the rest of us. So I was really grateful to be able to have this conversation with Don. And his podcast, The Invisible Wheelchair, is just exceptional. This invisible wheelchair name, so cool. And it was given to him by somebody, and he'll tell you the story on the podcast about how that came to be. And, you know, it's unique when you have a hidden disability. That in and of itself is another issue to deal with. When you have mental illness, when you have a nonverbal learning disability, when you've got something that is not right out there in front of somebody's face, it can tend to be just that next level of coping that you have to do, especially as a child. So that conversation was really fantastic, and I encourage you to head out to their website and take a look at what they've got going on at Focused Healthy Family, and all of their contact information will be in our show notes. And I really appreciate your openness and your honesty and your vulnerability, Dawn. This was really great. So here we go.
Welcome back, podcast fans. I'm your host, Annette Hines, and this is Parenting Impossible, the Special Needs Survival Podcast. Well, I'm back today talking about invisible disabilities with Don Grothoff. I was terrified I was going to say that wrong, but I think I got it right. Did I get it right, Don?
You did well.
Okay. Welcome, Don. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you. It's neat to be here. It's fun to talk with you.
So I just got to be on Don's podcast, and that was a lot of fun. We laughed a lot. I'm sure we're going to have another laughing hysterical fit when we talk. So first of all, Don, let's have a chat about your lovely family, because we are really going to get into it, because Don, like me, has the pleasure of having a family business with his wife. Yes. Everybody on this podcast knows that I practice with my husband, and many people look at me like I'm crazy with two heads. Like, how can you have a business with your spouse, but you're doing it too? So can you tell us a little bit about your family and how that family situation led you to what you do today?
Well, I am a proud father of 3 kids. I have my oldest is 23, my middle daughter is 19, and my youngest daughter is 12. My oldest is my son. And 2 of my wonderful kids have dealt with severe OCD, which is a obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a very extremely high anxiety disorder. And we were the kind of normal family up to a point where back when my daughter, I actually do a podcast on I want to be normal, because I have a lot of clients that come in to me and they sit down and go, so what's the issue? I just want to be normal. And I'm like, what does that mean? So
I'm sorry for interrupting. Please.
No, that's okay. I mean, we weren't as now. If you're my age, you'd think of we weren't Ozzie and Harriet. I don't know what now it would be the family, the perfect family. But about when my daughter was about 9, she had a sudden change in her personality and her whole life. She went from this bubbly little daddy's girl, bouncy, loving, laughing, easing life, to this fearful, sometimes demonous little being.
Oh God!
Because of OCD, and it was what's called sudden onset OCD, or some people know it as PANDAS, because it comes on what seems like a light switch. Just one night, out of the blue, it was a Saturday night, and she had a friend over for a sleepover, and they were having a great time. I mean, you could hear them upstairs in their bedroom just laughing and giggling and having a good time. She went into the bathroom. It was about 9 o'clock, and came out fearful. And I can remember coming down, and we were in the living room, my wife and I, and my wife, we were watching a movie or something, and she whispered something in my ear, and not my ear, my wife's ear. And my wife said, "Oh, come on, you can go back in your room. That's not dirty. What are you talking about?" And well, that started it. She felt like her room was dirty. And not just, we were not a clean household. We had dust bunnies galore. So that it
And
wasn't
three
that,
kids, so
yeah, it wasn't that kind of dirt. It was dirty in her mind that it was not safe to be in her room. And the toughest part is her friend was still in the room. And that just started a whole horrific journey. I almost call it my journey through hell, of battles, and because it just, it was not easy. She thought she had an obsession, with OCD. It's, you have thoughts that go through your head. They loop and loop and loop, and they're very devastating thoughts. Hers were deadly thoughts. If she didn't do a certain thing, somebody could get hurt. Somebody might die. And so she would have to wash her hands because she felt her hands were dirty. She would take 2 to 4 hour showers. She would wash her hands for 2-3 hours, and battle, and just 2-3 in the morning. So anyway, it was a very rough time. We've went through, and we're still going through it a little bit with my youngest. She also has OCD, not at the severity of the first child, but it was really brutal. I always say my wife and I probably came about 2 inches from divorce, because it was so, everything, our life kind of folded up, and we didn't have. We went to work if we, as best we could. We ate, and we tried to sleep. Those were our 3 survival methods, and everything else kind of closed up. So I don't need to go too deep into that, because it's a rough story. But through that, and a lot of things that happened around it, like having a heart attack, we had to figure out what to do, where to go, who to turn to, and there wasn't a lot of information. My wife had to do a lot of research, and she did, and I pride her with that, because she did the research. She found out where to go, what to do, how to take it and do stuff with it.
She's an occupational therapist.
Yes,
right?
Yes. And I am what I do is an alternative practice called EFT, or emotional freedom techniques. Most people know it as tapping, but it's a method for helping to bring down anxiety. And I was doing it as just for myself personally. I'd gone to a person, a coach that worked with that. And so when this happened, I started using it with my daughter and with my family. And it was very successful. Plus, it wasn't the only thing we did. I mean, we did so many different things, and I think that's one of the things that I see with dealing with special needs, is that you're pulling for everything you can. Oh, maybe this will work. Maybe this miracle will be the next one that'll save them or change them. And along as you reach out to grab that thing, the money goes right out with it. So we tried all kinds of things, and so when we were able to get her through that, OCD is not a curable thing; it's a manageable thing. And so when we got her to a manageable place, after the heart attack, my business that I was doing fell apart. Really kind of fell apart. I kind of let it go, and I decided to go into a practice to help. At that time, I was really helping parents, individuals, and kids, and trying to help them get through some of the anxiety that was around this. And then, like I say, over time, we decided, my wife being an occupational therapist, she'd always wanted to kind of join in and do some work with me with this. So about 1.5 years, maybe almost 2 years now, we started blending together. and coming together. And of course, COVID kind of threw us off some. So we're still kind of building and putting it together. But, our idea here is to be able to help other families that are going through that. We want to be a resource for them, to know that they can come to us and we can guide them instead of them having to do all the research, and we can help them bring down the anxiety. One of the things why we call it Focused Healthy Family is because we realized, and I think you and I talked about this, that, the person that's going through it, my daughter that was going through it, suffered tremendously, but also the rest of us did too. The anxiety in our, I always say the anxiety in our house was so thick you could have cut it with a chainsaw. It was just that bad. And the other kids suffered too. And I believe my youngest is going through the OCD a lot. And I don't want to put this blame on my daughter, but because of all of that, she was about a year and a half old when all this happened. And, those nights when my daughter would bust into our bedroom at 2 a.m, jump up on our bed and scream bloody murder at us, she would wake up just all frightened and
right.
And so I think it just led to her falling into the same thing, so that's...
I totally get that, because as I shared with you, my youngest, who is 4 years younger than my Elizabeth, has a lot of anxiety and OCD, although it's calming down now at age 20. But my Elizabeth's been gone 7 years. And I feel like a lot of that early on anxiety came from being a sibling of a very sick, profoundly disabled kid who was constantly in the hospital, constant medical crisis, all kinds of trauma, a lot of people through the house all the time, always trauma, drama, crisis after crisis, in the hospital, out of the hospital. A lot of times I'd be dragging Caroline with me to the hospital. And I just feel like, how could you not be an anxious child living through all of that? You have to be brain dead to not have anxiety after all of that.
Yeah. So that, her OCD, my heart attack, my wife went through some serious depression. She was in a car accident, kind of messed things up, not so much physically, but a lot emotionally. I had open heart surgery 2 years ago. So our family's been through this road of, and I don't like, I almost sometimes don't like talking so much about it, in the fact that I don't want to come across as some kind of, I don't want a pity party, but I do like to talk about it. So to let other people know that you're not alone in this, that, a lot of people are suffering in silence, like us. Their life's closed up. They're afraid they can't go out. There were times my daughter got to a point where she got so thrown back in her therapy, she went backwards big time and got stuck on the couch and couldn't touch us, and we couldn't touch her, and she couldn't touch anything. And we went through about 8 months of that. And so the things we had to do, and as a parent, what's the toughest part, I get a little cracked up at this, but when your daughter stands in front of you, Daddy, I want this to stop. I want to kill myself. I don't want this to go on any longer. And you can't grab her and hold her and say, it's okay. You're okay. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little, but that was the toughest thing that tore my heart apart so many times.
And you just can't fix it. And you can't make it stop.
I can't believe, 12 years later, and I still get very emotional about it, but it was just so, that was, when it rips your heart apart, it's hard to put back together sometimes.
But if this doesn't sound condescending, I don't mean it to, but I'm so proud of you and Gina, because you found your way out as a family. You did. And now you're sharing all of this with the rest of us, which is so awesome. So I know that you believe in something called conscious parenting. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I have to credit Gina probably more than myself, Not that I believe in it fully, but Gina's the one that has dragged me, pulled me along in that process. Because I think from day one, from 23 years ago when my first child was born, she said, I'm not going to feed my child crap. I'm not going to, feed his mind in a way. I want to do it naturally. She was a Leche League leader. She believed in breastfeeding.
Mhm.
This might be dangerous to say, but our kids slept in our bed, you know, uh, so she just believed in, and we really went down a road of consciousness, being more, I'm going to say spiritual, not religious, but more spiritual,
Mhm.
and believing that, what we think and what we believe up here can really change our life and make our life and all that. So consciousness just means, you know, Gina said when I asked her, like, what one word would describe what you think parenting is about? And she said respect.
And don't you think that helped you when you were facing these problems, though?
Well, like I said, it was a hard learning lesson, because when I told you the story, that first night that happened with my daughter, and consistent nights after that for quite a while, you know, it would be 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, and she would go into a ballistic breakdown, a meltdown. One night I walked in the room and my pants leg touched her bed sheets, and
No.
she went ballistic. She went, everything's got to be, first she said, everything has to be destroyed in here because it got dirty.
Mm.
And then it came down. Then everything had to be bleached, and then everything had to be washed. It just went. She just went off. I mean, she plastered herself up against the wall, and I said, no. I put my hands on my hips and I said, "There's no damn way we're doing that tonight. It's 11:30. Are you crazy?" That was what I called my military dad, which I'm not. I'm not military, but that was, and that did not work. That led to a 4-hour battle where she went in and destroyed our bathroom because she had to wash and clean, and so I learned through Gina that one thing she would always say to me is to say, just remember that inside that little beast that's happening right now is your daughter who you love. So it made me think about how I had to approach her. And that's what we talk about communication. I had to talk differently to her. I could not go back at her like she was coming at me. And that, because all we did was climb the wall together.
Mm-hmm.
So communication and consciousness of understanding that she's still my daughter, and that we have to be compassionate, firm, but compassionate in what we do.
Mm.
So I don't know if that really answered the question of consciousness, but
absolutely. I love that. So through all of this and through everything that you learned, you decided to take all this personal experience and turn it around to help other families, which is so beautiful. So where was that turning point for you?
Well, I think, it goes back to the heart attack. It was my, I always call it my 2x4 to the head, because when I was doing the tapping work, the EFT for myself,
Yeah.
I had this wonderful mentor. She was actually considered one of the masters of EFT. She helped develop the master's program for it. And she actually lives like about 20 minutes from my house. But I went to her for counseling, and we went through this, and she'd always say to me, you'd really be good at using this to help people, and and I said, yeah, someday, and I just kind of put it in the back of my mind, and I'd get these little messages, you really need to change what you're doing, because what I was doing was just really got to be monotonous. I got really bored with it, but I was doing it. It was a job,
Mm-hmm.
And when the heart attack came, well, the job kind of fell apart. Even I kind of let it too at the same time. And so I decided at that point that, I wanted to do something that I was more passionate about, which you can see my passion there. It came out today.
Yes.
And so I just decided at that point that I was going to do it differently. and try to help others in doing it. And so that's kind of where it got started. And like I say, Gina's always had this passion. She's always had passion for children, and I have too. I can remember when I took a part-time job one time at Circuit City, which is no longer around.
I know, they're gone.
Yeah, and I was working there, and I can remember one time this dad came in. He was carrying his little child. That's how small this child was, and the child they were doing something, and the child kind of smacked him in the face, like kids do sometimes. They'll just not really knowing what they're doing. They'll smack you or say, "Oh, be quiet," or something. And the father turned around and just smacked the heck out of him. Said, "Don't you ever do that." And I thought my heart was going to explode. I wanted to go over and smack him the same way in a way, but I don't advocate that. I didn't mean it, but I was just, it made me stand back. I think that's when the thought clicked in my mind that I want to help other kids and parents that are going through what they're going through. So that was a long answer for a short question.
No, of course not. That turned into Focused Healthy Family. That's your business, right? And so how does that work for people? What are you actually doing? What does that look like? Well,
like I said, we understood that it was the family that needed as much attention. The kids would get they'd have a therapist or a doctor that they would work with, but the rest of the family kind of left out of it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I told you my story about my youngest daughter, and
so we realized that how much the family needed to be kind of pulled back together, taken care of. So we kind of divided into three different parts. The philosophy we go for is respect, collaboration, and consciousness. And my part is one of my bigger part of it is the consciousness part, working with them, using the practice that I do and EFT and some other things to naturally help them to get out the baggage for the parents, teach them methods to be able to calm the anxieties down. Because if we can get that clear, then the next step we work on is communication.
So important.
Yes.
Communication.
And my wife we took a program based on a book called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. And so we do a whole program around that itself. And then my wife does, she did some training in they call it a personality inventory. It's based off of Myers-Briggs concept, but it's developed for children from ages, I think, 8 to 18.
Okay.
And the reason we did that is we want the family each to understand each other, how you take things in, how you put things out, and how you, based on what, so they understand each other and can communicate with each other, understand each other better, so they understand their personality style. So that I know when I'm talking, the father knows when he's talking to one child, they take things in this way. So he probably needs to shape it in his communication and his acts that he does and all that to fit that style. So we're getting communication and understanding each other. And then we work on kind of team building, playing games to show them how to interact and get along with each other and deal with each other. So it's kind of a 3-step based on those philosophies, the respect and the collaboration and the consciousness.
So how have things changed in this past year with COVID and everything? Because on my little anecdotal side of things in my practice, and we see a few hundred people a year, a few hundred families a year in our practice, say 300, 400 cases a year, which is not small, but, it's not huge either. I can tell you that I think the anxiety level is through the roof. What are you seeing as the professionals?
Well, I've been kind of surprised that we didn't do more than we did. I think the problem is, we don't take insurance. Our world is alternative, holistic, all of that. So we don't take insurance. So, and money became an issue because a lot of people lost their jobs. So I think that's why we didn't see as much influx to us.
I see.
But I do, anxiety is at an ultimate high, with this. Even with the OCD,
Especially with the OCD. Oh my gosh.
What really kind of, people don't understand OCD. They think it's organizational or it's, neatness or something like that. And it's not. It's about anxiety. And one of the things when the COVID came on, people were saying, oh, people with OCD should get this really easy and it should be, they know what to do and all this stuff. No, it's not that at all. It actually re-triggered, my youngest especially, it kind of re-triggered things for her.
Wow.
And caused the hand washing thing to go kind of bizarre. Mm-hmm. Because I think she one time saw a video where they said they should be washing your hands for 20 minutes. I think the person got it wrong, because I think it's really supposed to be 20 seconds really is something like 20 seconds to a minute, something like that is the proper washing time. So that threw her off, So, yeah. And all the kids are home, now.
The home thing, yes. So my younger daughter got triggered too, and she was home for a year, and she had an episode, and she was freaking out, and all we could do, I couldn't calm her down. So I basically had to pull out all the bleach and all the cleaning stuff, and we had to clean the kitchen from top to bottom. It was the only thing that would calm her down. And you know what? It was a small price to pay for her to relax. Sometimes that's the only battle that's the only way to win the battle. And I just said, everybody's upset right now. This was early on in the crisis, in the pandemic. And I thought I just don't think that there's any way we're going to win this rational fight.
No, it's very tough, and to be honest with you, what you were talking about with the bleach and doing that for your daughter with OCD, that's actually the worst thing you can do, because it just feeds OCD big time, because it tells OCD, yeah, see, you're right, everything is filthy dirty and you should have cleaned, you did it, so that 'cause trust me, we've been down that road.
Shame on me. But at a time when everybody was doing that, and
I didn't mean it as a judgment at all.
Cereal and I know, I hear you, but there was just no getting around it. I mean, I tried everything. I just couldn't figure out what else to do. When you've got on the news, people are scrubbing down their cereal boxes and they're leaving their groceries in the garage for 2 weeks before they'll bring them inside the house. And I didn't know what to tell her. The world was going crazy. So, Don, at that point, what do you do?
Yeah, it was not fun. We, like I said, because of it is the resurgent for us has been tough. And now we were homeschooling, so being home was not a problem. But I know a lot of the people we've worked with have told us that, and we've worked with trying to help them too, because you get on each other's nerves just by itself, let alone, the COVID thing or the school thing, or, just being around each other 24/7 can be, drive you kind of batty a little times,
Speaking of getting on each other's nerves, how do you like working with your wife?
I enjoy it. It's frustrating because her way of doing business is different than mine. She sees it differently. So we're learning now, how to. We're using our communication skills. So when something frustrates us, we can tell each other, which is good. It's frustrating at times, but I so enjoy it because when you get her going, when you get her once I get her on stage, she's a wealth of knowledge. She knows how to, answer things, and she's my research person too. So
Mhm.
that's, she has the knowledge. She can name books that, oh, you got that, you should read this, or, there's this, and she's really good. So like I said, it's been a little tough because I'm we got to do this, got to do this, got to do this, got to do this, kind in a way, and she's just like, we'll get to it, we'll get it done,
Oh, that's great.
So we're
I
learning to
really
balance.
appreciate that. I've been working with my husband for 10 years, and it's almost 10 years.
And you're still here. That's good.
It gets better with time, and I love it. So,
yeah.
Listen, I can't believe it, but we're running out of time. And I really want to make sure, Dawn, that we leave our audience with some good tips for dealing with the invisible disabilities, because that's what you all are just the experts at. And so if you could just talk to us about what your tips are, I would really appreciate that. Sure.
And, I think the first one is that we really have to pay attention to the whole family.
Yeah.
That, like I think I told you, a lot of times I'll have a client and they'll go, I just really need you to work on my child, fix my child. And I that's important. But what I think sometimes don't realize is that a lot of the time it's their own stuff, their own baggage, their way they handle things, the way they communicate, all of that needs to change too. Mm-hmm. And we need to pay attention to the parents. A lot of times we work with the parents first, trying to work mm-hmm. with them to get their clarity in the mind and all of that. But also paying attention to the other kids, because they're suffering a lot of times in silence.
I could not agree more.
And know that their stress level is off the chart too sometimes. Mm-hmm. So we have to, pay attention to the child that has the needs, that's the issue.
We're going to do that anyway.
Yeah. But try, it's tough because they demand your time sometimes, 60 to 90% of your time. There's
no ignoring that.
Yeah. And then another point is taking care of yourself. Mm-hmm. And that oxygen mask on yourself before the kids kind of thing is very important, because we came this real close to burning out, because it was just intense stuff. So, and then lastly is asking for help, because
very important.
We're so worried about that. The other person that you're going to ask is an adult, and they can decide whether they want to do it or not, and that's their problem. If they don't want to do it, they should be able to say no. If they say yes, then you don't have to worry about that. But like I think we talked about, a lot of times when you have a mental disorder, I'll put it that way, people tend to run away from it because they don't know what to ask, what to do, they don't want to bother you. And we need that more than ever. We need help. So, don't be afraid to ask. And friends of people like that, don't be afraid to call them up and say, hey, is there something I can do for you?
Yeah, that's great. Because what is the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, our website is focused with an ED, focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can go there and find out a lot of information there. I have a podcast that's called it's called Invisible Wheelchair, and you can go to invisiblewheelchair.com.
And I'm going to be on it, so
yes.
Take an episode together.
So on the site you can find information. You're welcome to contact us. Check out the blog, because it deals with all anxiety and OCD, anxiety issues, and even things that are around that. So I've got doctors up there, therapists. I've interviewed all kinds of different, and legal, which will be up there, probably in July. So, but yeah, the reason it's called Invisible Wheelchair, I just thought real quick, is to tell you, I had a client one time, a teenager, that we're in a session working on her anxiety, and as we were doing the tapping work, she got really worked up, and she just blurted out, I wish these kids would see my invisible wheelchair. Then they know what's going on with me. They wouldn't bully me. They wouldn't tease me because they know what's going on up in my mind. And I was blown away with that.
That's amazing.
She was 13 that she could come up with that kind of concept or
Yes.
that thought. And then I thought about it. It's like how real that is. If my daughter, with all the stuff she went through, if anybody would have seen her at that time, which was hard to do, they wouldn't have known what was the torment and the stuff that was going on up here.
That's true.
So it was invisible to anybody, and they were suffering. So anyway, that's
wow. That just gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, it was really powerful. I just was awestruck by that, and I mean we were able to really help her out and get her to a better place. But that
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, Dawn, thank you so much. This was such a great interview. Thank you. And everybody go check out their website and definitely check out the podcast, Invisible Wheelchair. And I am very excited that my episode will be on this summer. And Dawn, I really, really enjoyed meeting you, and I really hope to enjoy meeting Gina someday too.
That would be cool. That would be great. So yeah, thank you. It was really great to talk and get my information out, because like I said, I think if I can help one person be in a better place because of this, I think that's kind of a goal too.
Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in.
This concludes this podcast. We hope you will subscribe if you haven't already. Remember, we would love your comments, or if you have a story to tell, we want to put it up on the podcast. Simply go to invisiblewheelchair.com to do that. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest, we love guests. So simply go to invisiblewheelchair.com and contact us from there. Gina and I are here to help you or your family get to a better place naturally. Simply visit focusedhealthyfamily.com for more information. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Keep tapping and focusing forward for a better way.